Hello, my name is Abdelmati Asiri and I would like to welcome you in another Boeing 737 video tutorial. This video is the fifth in the series talking about the approach and landing in the Boeing 737 for new pilots. And in this video we'll try to tie the sync rate, pitch attitude, speed and thrust all together, especially when you are doing a correction. We'll cover three main points. The first one is the importance of controlling the pitch, that is controlling the control column when you adjust the thrust. The second point is when can you trade off speed for sync rate or doing the opposite. And the third point is flying into and out of a terminal when you are flying the approach. So for the first point, we'll simulate that we are on glide slope and localizer, but for some reason our speed dropped to VREF. Of course, the reaction in this case is to increase the thrust, and what happens with new pilots is they will fixate on the speed, and the airplane, as you know, will tend to pitch up with the increase in the thrust. And if you do not counteract that by increasing the pressure that you are applying on the control column, the airplane will pitch up, and when you get back to the scan, you'll find out that you are above the glide slope. So you started with one deviation and you end up with two deviations now. So remember, when you increase the thrust, if you are already on the glide slope, make sure to consciously control the pitch attitude and continue the scan. This is the most important thing, because you have already started the correction, so no need to fixate on the speed. Just go ahead with the scan, and then of course you return back to the speed and then assess the situation and adjust it from there. And the opposite is true, of course. So I'm going to simulate now the speed is above the target speed. So again, the thing that happens is because of the lack of the scan, usually one or more of the parameters will be lost or deviation from. So in a case like this, of course, I'm above the glide slope, so I'm gonna try to get back on the glide slope. And of course my speed is still increasing. So let's say I got fixated on the localizer and glide slope, trying to get back on the glide slope. This is a little bit extreme, but let's say now I was happy with how far I am from the glide slope. I continued my scan and suddenly found myself way above the target speed. So again, if you are on the glide slope, the action of course is to reduce the thrust. Now again, with reducing the thrust, the airplane will tend to pitch down. So again, you need to consciously control the pitch attitude to make sure that the airplane does not pitch down more than you want it to. Otherwise, the speed will be maintained or even increased. So if you maintain the pitch attitude, you'll be able to control the glide slope, as well as the speed will be decreasing slowly to get back to your target. So reduce the thrust, remember to consciously control the control column, and make sure to continue your scan, never stop on one parameter. So just to summarize this point, if you are on the proper glide path, if you do any adjustment on the thrust, make sure to control your pitch attitude by consciously paying attention to the increase in the pressure of the control column. If you decrease the thrust, then you need to increase the pressure of pulling up the control column, and that is assuming that you are already on a fully trimmed situation. If you are out of trim, then it's just an adjustment of how much pressure you are applying. Second point is to continue the scan. So anytime you adjust the thrust, make sure that you keep the control column in your mind, and make sure never to stop at any one parameter, but just to continue the scan throughout your approach. Now, how about if the speed and the glide slope were not on target? For the second point, we have four situations for the glide slope and speed deviation. The first one is being above the glide slope and your speed is low. The second point is being above the glide slope and your speed is high. The third one is being below the glide slope and your speed is low. And the fourth one, which is the most critical, is being low and slow, that is below the glide slope and your speed is low as well. For the first scenario here, the speed is low and we are above the glide slope, and in a situation like this, sometimes by just pitching down to increase your sync rate to capture the glide slope and maintain the glide slope, you'll be able to gain enough speed. So initial reaction might be just to pitch down and then decide, because you'll be doing the regular scan and then you'll get back to the speed and assess whether you need to increase or decrease the thrust. For the second scenario, we are above the glide slope and the speed is high, and in this case you will need to reduce the thrust and then maintain your pitch attitude or even decrease it, because we are below 1000 feet AGL. So you maintain a 1000 feet per minute descent rate and reduce the thrust. The speed will decrease slowly, and once it reaches your target speed, then adjust the thrust. For the third scenario, we are below the glide slope and the speed is high. So in this case, again, by just pitching up to return back on the glide slope, you might be able to slow down to a good speed and then follow the glide slope. Again, once you intercept the glide slope, then assess the situation with the speed, whether you want to decrease the thrust or not. And finally, for the fourth scenario here, this is the most dangerous one, where you are low and slow. In this scenario, you need to be aggressive, and the priority should be to gain speed and then get back on the glide slope. So gain speed just by, if you have enough thrust to accelerate above VREF and you see that you have good acceleration, then you might pitch up to return back on the glide slope, and after that you continue the scan and then decide on the thrust and on the pitch attitude. So for all the scenarios, make sure to continue the scan always, and remember it is a continuous adjustment for the thrust and the pitch attitude. So for the third and last point for this video, which is flying into and out of a thermal, there are many phenomena that you might encounter on the approach. One of them is thermals. Thermals usually when you have a stable weather and after you have stabilized the airplane on the approach, suddenly the airplane will pitch up. Of course, the speed will decrease and your reaction is to increase the thrust and pitch down. And now what you need to remember is you need to undo that, or you lose this increase in performance as you fly out of the thermal, and then you need to go back to your original pitch attitude and thrust setting. One thing I'd like to highlight here is to go easy on the stab trim if you encounter thermals, because remember, if you adjust the stab trim, then you need to adjust it again as you fly out of the thermal, so you might increase the workload on yourself by adjusting the stab trim. I'm going to cover the stab trim in a future video, and I just wanted to give you an idea about thermals. Just remember, everything mentioned in this video and in this channel in general is meant as for information only. So feel free to try it in your home simulator or in the actual simulator when you do your recurrent. Other than that, please discuss anything with your training department or your training captain. So this concludes this video. I hope it would be of some benefit to you. And as always, if you have any questions, comments or concerns, please let me know. Until next video, this is Abdul Mati Asiri. Wish you a safe flying and smooth landing. Thank you for watching.